When we left Germany, it was devastating for me. Your life is in transition. You're in a place for a very short period of time. These situations where you don't have your belongings with you. We live off of a rice cooker. Am I from the Philippines? No. I've told myself I need to develop some kind of identity. What is my cultural identity? And they brought their cultural identity with them, which allowed me to give me some sense of who I am. That Filipino culture is very strong, is very embedded. I have that. That's wonderful.
Okay, so today we're talking about identity and sense of belonging in the military. Now, there's a lot of belonging and identity in the military, but really, when you say that, it's about the service member and the veteran. The veterans have their beards, they have their grunt t-shirts, they have their hats, they have their pickups. There's a lot of good pride there. Mm-hmm. And generally, but maybe a little less so with the spouse. But what about the children? The children just get dragged along and thrown into it. And we're going to explore that today. So, Jocelyn, I'd like to ask you a question.
Yeah.
Where are you from?
And I always halter and stutter and do this quick running in my brain asking, what is the situation here? How much time do I have to answer that question?
Like if we were just getting to know each other, you bumped into me or we ran into each other in a class or at work.
Okay, look,
Where are you from?
If we had 20
come on,
seconds,
spit it out.
If we had 20 seconds, I live in California. I'm from the Orange County area. If I had a nice meal with you, I would tell you that I am from everywhere and nowhere. That's what I would say. And then I'd have some time to describe why. Yeah. But I'm not really from anywhere. I guess I am, but I'm not. I don't know in a way. Many times I'm not sure. I ask myself and I'll say, well, maybe today I can say that I'm more from this place, or maybe today I can say I'm more from this place. And it shifts and it changes. And it has been like almost every few years.
So you were a military brat. Mm-hmm. And where were you born?
I was born in Germany. And
You're not blonde.
I'm not blonde. I don't speak German because that's the second question that's always asked right after I tell them I'm from Germany. So no, I don't speak the language, and I'm sorry. But I was born there, and I lived there for many years. And what people don't know is that if you really were to ask me, like, where does home feel like, I don't feel like I'm allowed to. I feel like there's a little bit of an imposter syndrome to even say or identify Germany, but I really feel a very strong affinity with Germany. And yeah, but I've lived other places. It's just the place that I think I may have hung up my hat the longest as a child. How
long were you there after you were born?
We were there for a short period of time, maybe less than a year after I was born, maybe 2. Then we moved to Georgia, where my brother was born, which was the United States. I really don't remember Georgia.
But you were maybe 1 or 2 at that point.
I don't remember it. And then we moved back to Germany. So for me, there's like a consistent period of time where I would say I was born, but then I can't say, which is a common phrase that I hear people say, I was born and raised in such and such. And that's where I get this like inner conflict. I'm like, born and raised, was I? I don't know, because I left for a little bit and then I came back. Like, does that count? Or do I not say that anymore? But I stayed there until I was probably 11 years old. And
that's a lot of formative years.
Yeah. It was definitely formative years, and just long enough to grasp memories that are very visceral, that are very nostalgic. I feel a lot of nostalgia. Like, I mean, maybe that's also a telltale sign of belongingness. Like when you have that question asked, where do I belong? But when we have a nostalgia for certain place and time period. There's something there that I think like my soul really connected with.
Well, I think if we try to figure out where someone's from, I think a lot of times they think back to, well, maybe either a positive or negative place when or feeling when they were young. What are some things that you feel, or what are some thoughts that come up for you when you think about?
Yeah, see, I
Where are you
smile, I close my eyes, and I remember like the night markets. I remember St. Nicholas. I remember taking my shoes out in school and waiting for those, like the golden coins to come in my shoes. I remember the broochen. I remember schnitzel. I remember the music. I remember the cobblestones. I remember the castles, the hikes, the Volksmarches, and just traveling every weekend. Europe was like a backyard, like we would be going to a different country every weekend in our big old minivan, and we would just visit some other place. And we had friends in other places, like there were military bases in Italy, so we'd go to Italy and we'd spend time there. I remember sleeping on an ice box and driving like 9 hours so that my parents could go to Holland because they heard there's beautiful fresh fish off the harbor in Holland, and that was my first time being there. And I just like it still all felt like home to me, like this backyard, just an extended backyard. And when we left Germany, it was devastating for me. Like it was like I was leaving my home, right? But like you couldn't really say that was your home because you already knew as a military child that everything, like early on, that your life is in transition, that you're in a place for a very short period of time and you don't know what the roof over your head's gonna look like and in what city. Yeah, I remember we lived in. I remember we lived in a hotel because what happens is you get a PCS, and a lot of times they're not ready for you when you get there. So you're living in temp housing, and that could take a period of time. I don't know. So those are also little mini moves within the move, right? Like I remember we lived in a hotel for a period of time, and
You moved to a hotel, and then you moved somewhere.
And you're living in these situations where you don't have your belongings with you. You're like, we lived off of a rice cooker, like with a little small fridge, and we'd get eggs and tomatoes. And my parents are born from the Philippines, so they have Filipino blood. I have that in me, right? So they have that culture that they bring.
Are you Filipino?
And ethnically I'm Filipino. Am I from the Philippines? No, I've been there twice. But you look at me, I've got exactly the same features of a Filipino, right? And but I don't really identify as being from the Philippines. I do, as life has passed, I've told myself I need to develop some kind of identity. What is my cultural identity? And I have, thanks to my parents, wherever we went, they brought their cultural identity with them, which allowed me to give me some sense of who I am. And that Filipino culture is very strong, is very embedded. I have that. That's one. That's wonderful. But the others, the other stuff that like you don't really get to digest because you're not really sure if you're part of that culture. Like you're visiting, and what do you do when you still feel this connection with that community? What do you do? Can you kind of boldly state like I'm German? I've never said that, not once. Even though I always lead with I was born in Germany, because I never want to cross somebody's line and state that I'm, I identify as a German person. I would never dare do that. Mm-hmm. Even though like I soaked up everything. I remember the
first time you really left was when you were 11.
Yeah. And I remember being so invested in understanding the history of the Holocaust and World War II and learning all about that and that time in concentration camps and just the history. I had no interest in American history. It was all about what has happened over there and what happened to the citizens over there. It wasn't, what happened to the American soldiers that helped in the war. That wasn't my orientation. It was what happened to the people that lived there. And yeah, so there was just and snow. I see as I'm talking about it, I get the nostalgia. I get it rushes to me. I love the snow. I missed the snow. I missed the forest. I miss walking through the forest. I just everything about it is so like it's the countryside. It's beautiful. You can't get that or see that anyway. The structure, the churches, just the way things were laid out. The pace of the people, the way they get groceries. Like you do it small pieces, days at a time. You don't do the storing and stocking up like what we do here in the United States in our big old refrigerators, and then things rot and we forget about it.
Refrigerator in the garage.
Yeah, and then we say
over
we
there,
need
you
another
only have
one.
one small refrigerator.
Yeah, over there, and then it's fresh.